Good morning, good day, and good evening, depending where you are in the world. Today we are joining the Living World of Darkness vampire venue. There's a couple of kindred have come to visit uh, Thaddeus Steelsworth at his local occult shop. He's passed some business cards, made some people aware that it's kindred friendly, and tonight, as a couple of kindred arrive, he will close the shop to the everyday customer early and invite them in that private business can be discussed. His occult shop, Sticks, Stones, and Bones, is a relatively small single floor affair. It's set under some larger businesses in an older uh, neighborhood, uh, recessed down about 2 steps. Most of the windows are blacked out, uh, black curtains forming backdrops. It's a relatively crowded shop. Everything from New Age healing crystals, traditional Wiccan, uh, pagan Celtic, a variety of Eastern mysticism symbols and implements, African antiques and relics, and it's a little strange when people enter. It's got a little bit of a strange feel to it. Um, kind of a gloomy, think you see something out of the corner of your eye type place. But as everyone enters, Thaddeus changes the sign to closed, invites everyone else in. Um, he does keep a young woman present. He appears to be kind of training her on the shop and has her stay. I know as Serena would approach, he'd certainly be pleased to see his clanmate. He's been wrapped up in some projects and hasn't socialized as much as he'd like.
Yep, Sabrina is coming in a black limousine, and the driver waits in front of the store.
And Thaddeus will actually move to open the door for her as she approaches the shop.
Thaddeus, what a wonderful invitation you got here. I've never been to your shop.
Yeah, it's a small affair, but I built it myself from the ground up, and I felt it was time to put it out there and welcome friends, family, and kin.
Well, it's quite an accomplishment. Anybody else is joining us tonight?
I'm not entirely sure. I passed the word around that I was closing up early and made sure everyone was aware. I know there's those who tend to travel a little more discreetly, so I did make sure that the sewer covers and storm drains were unobstructed. Should any of our kin who wish to not announce themselves come that route, but I do have a companion that I can certainly introduce. The young lady behind the counter is Elizabeth. Um, she's primarily going to be observing, but she's recently come into my close employment.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Elizabeth.
With our unique social circles, she's primarily just observing and getting her bearings. It's a bit of a reality shift, although probably a little softer transition than or I had. I don't know the specifics, but I know when I became what we are, there was no educational curve. It was one night I wasn't, and the next night I was. She's taking a sort of a halfway and temp route, as it were.
Well, I wish I had a softer approach myself. That's very human of you.
He'll kind of lean in quietly and say, a whisper, "If you recall, I had some specific projects and experiments that required mortal involvement. So she's serving a dual purpose, both as
How is it going on that side?
subject and candidate." Well, she has a number of unique features that have led me to slow down the primary experiment while I get some better documentation. It seems she has some sort of uh, mystic quality to her blood. I hope to learn more, but it's a subject I'm reluctant to breach too directly as well.
I
Enough,
quite
enough shocks at
understand.
once.
Should you need any help, feel free to ring me. I love research.
I'll certainly do that. I think it's going to be a combination of interaction and observation. I'm not sure how much she's consciously aware of yet. Not exactly something you can just broach over a cup of coffee.
I was wondering how is doing your shop?
It's
Have
it
you registered profits?
it's been profitable. It helps that with uh, my work and my certifications through the museum, I come into contact with antique dealers, collectors, archaeologists, and I'm able to use those connections to stock the shop. Some things that they find that are better suited for resale than museum display.
True, true. I might have a way for you to reach more old ladies that wants to get rid of their furniture.
Well, I'm always looking to see what else is out there. It's the occult is a fairly broad market and appeals to a fairly broad market as well. I have one woman, her husband is a fairly well-to-do white collar, and so she has more time and money than anything else, and has found that some of the new age mysticism appeals to her, and I'm more than happy to help educate her in those practices and provide tools, implements, and services.
That's very generous of you, Thaddeus.
I found myself to be somewhat of an interior decorator as it ties into some of the feng shui beliefs.
Well, I didn't know that about you.
I didn't know it
I
about
myself
myself
pretty
until she
busy.
wrote the first check.
I'm really busy these days with the war efforts and everything. You heard about the prince, I hope.
I heard some about it. I was not able to be present, wrapped up in some of my direct experiments and coordinating. Recently had a paper published as well, so that had kept me a little occupied. Probably for the best I wasn't there. I'm not a combatant directly myself, but I do hope to get involved. I think perhaps I've got some skills that can be useful more on the research side that way as sort of a detective or that angle.
Well, every effort is needed. And let me just, between you and I, the prince is pretty pissed off.
Understandably so, and this may be an opportunity for him to perhaps bring some of the those of us who are younger and newer to a position where he can utilize us better. Um, and unfortunately, it makes for a poor example because of how it was applied and utilized. But if you look at pre-World War II Germany, the use of young men in the communities they already existed as a method of propaganda and enforcement was
True.
extremely effective, albeit
And
distasteful.
speaking of, I have a certain project. You remind me of it.
I'm not sure if I should be flattered or concerned that I remind you of a project.
No, be flattered for sure. You remember in the war to finance it, what people were doing, especially young ladies?
Yeah, well, there was certainly a variety of things, but yeah, some of them certainly crossed lines that were considered socially and culturally taboo at the time.
Well, the war bonds have been proven to be useful to finance a war.
War bonds certainly were one of the methods. The application of a new labor field certainly helped. Employing young women as laborers was a new tactic, and from an
Well,
economic standpoint, was effective because as a new labor force, they were cheaper.
what happens in a city where laws are super enforced and there's not much liquor license given and all the crappy buildings are being demolished, especially for Sabat?
Well, certainly we have a variety of opportunities there. With buildings being demolished, real estate investment becomes a valid option. Business startups, um, if those buildings that are demolished can be used as turnkey properties, um, even if it's to house other economic assets. And with, as you say, liquor licenses, you're going to drive an illicit trade there, just as we've seen happen with firearm licensing, just as we saw with prohibition, uh, alcohol licensing, just as we've seen with marijuana use. If you restrict it, it drives the demand and the price up for those people who are willing to operate outside those regulations.
Well, I think that's what we should do for the Sabat territory. Combining influences and money to purchase as much of the land as we can and push them on a corner.
Sure.
If there's cops everywhere, there's no new nightclubs open, they won't be able to feed as much as they want. If they are starving and they don't have any more shelters, they will be cornered.
That's a valid point. Certainly, take away their assets, restrict their ability to operate by effectively starving them out, smoking them out, as it were. I'm actually
And with
hoping to.
time, it might prove a good investment because all the real estate purchased this way would be shared by most of the kindred of the society.
True, there's opportunities there. Once the existing turmoil is addressed a little bit and things have stabilized, there's opportunity for those to turn into fresh, um, individually controlled territories, very localized
Exactly.
territories, of course. But
So I guess you would be interested in contributing in a fund.
I think that would be definitely a worthwhile asset. I think there are certainly those beyond our clan that could be useful in such things who have connections elsewhere as well. I'm hoping to establish myself a bit more, and I'm hoping that the things such as the publication of my paper, um, and I'm hoping that will springboard me to allow me to publish more in the mortal society, that I can establish myself in the academic circles. Um, as I
Well, I
mentioned,
have some plan as well for the university, but that has been put on the ice due to the war.
and as I mentioned as well, I have right now one regular uh, customer that I interact with uh, in the higher society. Unfortunately,
Interesting.
my family name doesn't come with quite as much as it used to. The Steelsworth family is seen some decline with the changes in the steel industry, but uh, I think the remnants of that name, the prestige it does still hold, coupled with that connection with her, I'm hoping to establish a network in that uh, circle as well. In fact, my thought had been network through her and start a sort of a women's circle or that sort of thing. Much like a wine club or a book club would be, but built around these different occult beliefs and things, and many of those are tied to a sort of elitism. The cultural artifacts, the investment needed to pursue some of these various occult practices are beyond the means of the everyday person. And I will believe if I reinforce that idea that these practices and beliefs and this culture is a select thing for these women because of their status, it will
Well, that's a shame that your
drag
name
me
has
up.
been forgotten. If I may help by using mine, I'll be glad to help you out. This is the Upper East Side, after all. Nobody can buy their way in. You need to be invited.
That's true, and I think and your offer certainly helps. And between you and my contact, Mrs. Stone, perhaps the fact that I do have that lineage, even if my family's declined somewhat, um, this might be a possibility to be a turning point. I have enough lineage there to justify the invitation, so to speak.
Of course, of course. But what did your family do to be forgotten? Only the economy?
Primarily, they overinvested in uh, the steel markets, and with the rise of international steel markets that could undercut us when we were still in Pittsburgh, it cut us off a little bit at the knees. There were
I
some
understand.
some losses. They were able to turn that around, but not entirely.
Well, same thing happened with my family during the Great Depression. But luckily, we have been able to rebuild our name.
Yes, that certainly helps. As I said, ours were there was too overextended and too committed to a single course of action. They didn't diversify enough a few generations back, and now it's come back to bite us.
Luckily for us, on my side, we had already kindreds in the family. They were being able to ensure the future of the lineage.
That certainly helps.
Well, without that little assistance, that wouldn't cost me a 10,000 business suit for my uncle. There's a big hole in it now.
Yeah, well, that would be a
And she
unfortunate
shows
side
you with her
effect.
fingers the size of the hole in the suit.
I
The
imagine
prince
that's
got shot.
That would be an understatement with the size of that particular penetration.
Well, I had a hard time to calm him down. I'm quite sure he's still pacing around his lair.
Yeah, I could understand him being a bit put out for that.
Well, he's Bruja after all. He's entitled to have some tantrums.
Yeah. Well, with discussing the efforts to gain control of some of those territories, that might be maybe not him specifically, but those of his clan might be able to swing mortal opinion to well, if they knew that there were local investors interested in doing some not gentrification but neighborhood rehabilitation, some restoration efforts. Uh, I could see certainly local populations throwing their support behind that. Everyone would rather
Yes.
have someone present, and
And
certainly the more angles we can get.
if we control most of their assets as well, the Sabat will have no choice to flee.
Flee, or they may begin to act reckless.
Aren't they already?
Some, but not as much as we'd like. Not enough to identify them.
Well, in all fairness, I'm not sad that the Malkavians died.
Well, there are drawbacks to that as well.
Ezra will take this opportunity and knock on the door out front.
Thaddeus opens it relatively quickly.
Ezra walks in, takes a look around, bows to Sabrina, tips his hat, looks at Thaddeus for the first time, and introduces himself. Ezra, Clan Nosferatu. Pleasure to meet you, sir.
It's a pleasure, Thaddeus Steelsworth of the Tremere.
Nice to meet you again, Ezra.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. 2 Tremere, 1 Nosferatu, 1 occult shop. Interesting combination, don't you think?
It's not usually my scene, but I had some talks and I was curious to see how my fellow partner is doing in it with his business. And I must say, you did quite well. I love the decoration. By the way, do you have any sage?
I do, and he'll go around. He's actually got like an antique apothecary cabinet that he starts going through the drawers. He said, they're well labeled, well organized, and my staff never rearranges, and yet some days it feels like I
Well,
still can't remember where I put things.
I'll have to send a ghoul to pick a lot of it. I need to clean up the place. So, Ezra, I was curious. What's going on with the Nosferatu clan these days?
Just hanging out. Just hanging out. How about yourself?
Well, I'm still looking for a location of a certain bunker located underground. Any news on it?
I've been looking around. I haven't found anything just yet. I should have something for you.
And that
Probably
would be
by
really
Monday.
appreciated. Especially that we are at war. Probably our predecessors in the Camarilla left some stuff in the sewer.
I would like to hope so.
I'm also curious to know, is there any Nosferatu living underground near my place?
I couldn't say right now.
Well, if you know, please let me know. I'm about to do major renovations. I don't want to inconvenience any neighbors.
That would be a terrible incident if rubble were to fall down and bury somebody.
Yes, and I'm thinking maybe of opening a secret passage for the Nosferatus to be able to come in the hotel discreetly.
That would be appreciated.
So I was thinking if I'm building up again in the hotel, why not, if there's nobody living underground, ask them if they want to be good neighbors. Provides mutual security.
I like the idea, especially when our friends from Jersey are coming into Elysium with 30 millimeter anti tank rifles and shooting people in the face.
Exactly. And my hotel offers a very nice view on some creatures if you stand on the rooftop at midnight.
A little too high for my liking, but I will keep that in mind.
Yes, you can observe the Garus.
Mm.
Thaddeus kind of perks his head up a little bit at that. He said, I've only heard passing mention of them. I don't know much, but I may have to see
Well,
what
for
I
what
can
I've been
see.
informed, they are mostly in Central Parks, and as you well know, my hotel is just next to it.
As long as it doesn't have a prominent sunrise view. That's,
Well, that's what I find very appealing with an hotel. It offers shelter and anonymous.
Thaddeus, I was wondering if you ever came across any scepters. Specifically ones with a head on them.
a head is a fairly loose term. There's a variety of practices that have similar things. Cultures with shrunken heads that were often affixed to scepters. Some of the European paganistics, the Gaulish and uh, Germanic cultures, sometimes even the Baltic cultures, through the use of impalement. It wasn't necessarily by design. I'm not sure if I'd even call it a scepter, but certainly the head on the end of a pointy stick becomes a scepter.
Are you interested in becoming a king yourself? I prefer a gift to a lady eventually.
Neither. Just running down a lead on something. Trying to see if it popped up in any of the shops, occult shops, or a fancy of mine. I tend to find quite a bit of what I'm looking for in occult shops typically.
I
Are
can
you looking for one in particular?
Just looking for one that, it's about 3 or 4 feet long. Not a typical scepter, but, it's got a face on it, and a head on it, and a blade at the tip of it. Sometimes, antique shops, occult shops, they deal in the weird and the unique. I've got a halfway decent network around the globe that deals in import export.
Well, if you run out of luck, I know nice jewelers that could build it for you.
I might have to take you up on that.
I can certainly put out the word through the network. In addition to my shop here, I work at one of the local museums in the research department, so I interact that way as well.
I would appreciate that.
Um,
So how
I'm
long have you
very
had this
curious
shop,
to know.
Thaddeus?
It's been a couple of years.
How do you find the rent?
Not too bad.
We've been looking into possibly opening up something, but haven't really found a good location yet.
Well, if money is a problem, I might know some people that would be willing to invest or procure you the needs to build yourself a small fortune.
Fortunately, right now, money is not a problem. We do pretty well finding things that people need or moving things around. Small, large, things that go boom, things that don't go boom.
I was more
People,
referring to something legit that gives you access to lots of people in this society.
that might be interesting.
Well, it provided that your ghoul knows how to press the right buttons, you could make a lot of money.
Yeah, might have to talk to you about that in a separate meeting. I appreciate the
Well,
offer.
not to brag, but my goal is walking door by door is making a little fortune for herself. She sold more than $200,000 last year.
Does she sell Tupperware?
Of course. A bit of domination, and the ladies are buying. Plus, it's always good to use containers to smuggle stuff.
It's always good. I do agree with that.
So I take that you boys are not from New York originally.
My family's from Pittsburgh originally. I did do some studying here. Was employed by the museum prior to my embrace as well.
Well, it's always good to be back home. I wasn't in New York for a very long time. I was schooled in Europe.
I originally came from southern France near the Sancerre region, but world traveled now.
Oh, the French Riviera. I had lots of fun there a long time ago. Too unfortunate that I had a car accident that changed everything.
It tends to be like that sometimes. The roads can be tricky.
Yes, but the outcome is not so bad. I enjoyed my time in the mountains. I think it was my third husband that was having a villa near Monaco. Or was it the fourth one? I'm getting lost in time sometimes.
I could see how that could certainly happen. I spend my nights surrounded by artifacts of a variety of different ages, cultures.
Yes, speaking of, have you been in contact to certain Egyptian artifacts recently?
No, but it's always it's a different culture, and it's certainly one I'd be interested in studying.
Well, with the serpents gone, I'm quite sure a few of their artifacts are roaming on the markets.
I should look around.
Then, rumor says that they had magical stuff.
Well, that would make sense. There's certainly plenty of stories of blood sorcery uh, in their mythos.
I would be curious to examine these. They had a sense of class, and everything was made of gold.
Yes, there's certainly a quite an advanced culture and society built around it, and built around their faith primarily, like many of the early cultures.
Yes, and did you came across anything made of silver?
We have some minor pieces here. I can go through my inventory and get a full list sent over to you after we're done here, if you'd like.
Oh, that would be really appreciated, but I'm more looking at something of not that much value. I'm trying to recycle silver.
Well, why don't I get a full list of all the bits and pieces? Right now, they're scattered throughout cases, mixed, mingled. I tend to sort by culture and practice more than more than anything else. So I'll get a full list together, and we can see if it's worth your time.
Oh,
Some
of course.
some of
It's
them, when
only
they've been filigreed and modified and plated, and there's other bits and pieces and metals mingled in it, it's not always worth the reclamation efforts.
of course, but I'm looking to weaponize, if you know what I mean.
Well, I can imagine, and in fact, I may even have something like that around here. Some of the things that come in, I don't sort as well as I should.
Well, if you
I,
need help, I got a staff that I can lend you.
I have staff as well, but I have the unfortunate problem of distracting them and myself, being a bit more lax, and with my memory, I can remember everything I brought in. It's a matter of where did they put it. I tend not to use a system because I don't need one, but then when I have other people involved, it throws a wrench in that.
True enough. What about you, my dear Nosferatu? Do you enjoy the company of mortals down there in the sewers?
I don't enjoy the company. I don't enjoy the company too much. Every so often, I'll see a few down there. But
Oh, so you haven't yet made a human acolytes.
no, no time yet. I've been busy, 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 busy. Always busy.
So you've
Well,
dab-
it passes the time.
you say you've dabbled in some of the various occult shops and such. Do you find yourself to be a practitioner or simply a interested academic, or is it more of a business?
So, more of a collector and dealer or facilitator. But
Okay.
over time, due to the facilitation, I've picked up a few things along the way. Some it interests me, but it's not something that I have had enough free time to fully dabble into and engulf myself with. But I've learned a few things along the way.
Well, rest assured that my friend over here is very knowledgeable in the arts.
I would like to see if you have a weapon that has been imbued with magic that can help me kill any of those nasty Sabat if I run into them again.
I'm sure we can arrange something. If I don't hear, then I'm sure we have something back at the Chantry that I can discuss. Certainly, if we're going to with the war efforts, some level of trust and teamwork needs to exist, and it'd be pretty foolish and unreasonable of us to hoard assets like that when they could be put into the hands of others who could utilize them.
That gives me an idea. What's your favorite weapon of choice?
Preferably a dagger.
A dagger? Don't you prefer a gun or something more modern?
Nope. Just a dagger. Two, preferably.
I'm a fan of such things as well. They're concealable, discreet, generic as well. There's so many out there that they'd leave less identifiable records if forensics should get involved. Um, they tend to be cheaper to replace, cheaper to dispose of.
True, and provided the use of certain rituals, that dagger can be enchanted.
Yes, I've heard such things. It's not a ritual I've uh, had opportunity to study myself yet, but it's on my list.
Oh, you seem to have a lot on your list, dear.
Well, if one's going to call themselves an academic, they should always have more reading to do than they have time for.
Well, I happen to know people. If that could facilitate your wish list.
Well, certainly there's nothing wrong with outsourcing. You don't need to know everything if you just know the right people.
Well, that's exactly my job, collecting talents, knowing who's doing what so I can put people together and connecting the dots.
Sounds like the foundation of a dating service ad.
Well, not really dating because, most of us don't function anymore down the belt.
True, although relationships can be intimate in other ways, certainly.
Yes, but I don't know if I'm ready to spend my eternity with a single soul.
Well, that's certainly true too. I think the ideas of those relationships become more fluid when you look at lifetime as an indefinite measure. The traditional mortal marriage, and indeed the primarily Christian marriage, is two people, typically a male and female, and it's till death do us part. Well, we've already passed that threshold. So what's next?
Well, as the decade goes, you get bored of always driving.
Well, there's merit to that as well, and certainly the relationships we build with one another and the intimacies we share as kindred are much more fluid.
Sorry, I was lost in thought. I completely zoned out a second ago when I was asking for the magical daggers. I do remember uh, Sabrina saying something about what I liked more than the other, but yeah, daggers are my thing. I used the dagger the other day on the Sabbat when I ripped his spine completely out of his body.
It seems like a fairly effective method in and of itself.
It was. He was on fire. It was not a pretty sight. Not at all. But it was an interesting night, Elysium was.
I imagine so.
I certainly wasn't expecting heavy weapons to be involved.
I don't think anyone does.
So, do you have any daggers here in your shop?
Oh, certainly. I've got a variety if you're just looking for simple functionality. I can't, unfortunately, say that any of them have been enchanted, but as Sabrina mentioned, we have people who can certainly take care of that. But if you're just looking for daggers themselves tonight, and we can schedule an opportunity for them to get enchanted in the future, or you can take your pick and we can get it enchanted and have it delivered.
Okay. Do you have any silver daggers? Chris daggers, preferably?
I'm sure if I dig around, I would. It's it's strange. It's far more common than you would think. There's so many cultures in which it appears as an element.
Yeah, I figured with the open population of Garou that are running rampant pretty much in the center of the city that we would or we should all have something to protect against them, at least hurt them bad before they rip us to shreds.
Well, I can speak for myself. I'm having a big chandelier made of silver installed in a ballroom.
That would be interesting to watch fall upon one.
Exactly. I'm intending to renovate the hotel to booby-trapped it.
I can only imagine.
Plus, I'm interested in some weapons as well, but something more ancient than a dagger. Not sure if Thaddeus can provide it to me.
He kind of chuckles and says, "That sounds like a challenge."
Yes, I'm looking for an antique Japanese sword.
A specific one, or just a antique style? And
I only purchased the best.
well, I can certainly reach out and see what we have available. I have some here, but they're not quite as old. In fact, I've got one in the shop that's it's a relic that was obtained from an officer during World War II, but had been in the family for a number of generations prior to that.
Interesting. Perhaps some investigation around this one could prove useful. The soul of the warriors tend to inhibit such swords. I'm looking for something that can chop heads without efforts.
Well, that's certainly those that are more, as you say, have some sort of heritage to them.
Yes, let me know if you find something interesting. I'll be more than happy to help you guys acquire it.
I will dig into my my notes from there and see what I can come up with. I'll also reach out to some of my contacts. So, and he pulls out a notebook, writes them down, and he says, two commission pieces that we're looking for. One is a head on a bladed scepter. The other is antique Japanese swords, preferably those with identifiable histories.
Yes. You know, you don't draw those swords without giving them blood.
Well, I think even the the thing that is not recognized is that no sword, even a ceremonial sword, is not made simply for decoration. It is always a weapon. It might have been meant more for showmanship, but it was meant even then to imply warrior abilities and violence.
Well, I don't like violence for violence, but self-defense is good. It's a form of violence that's tolerable.
Exactly. Well, and even intimidation, which is implied violence.
And with the recent event, I don't want to be the next one to go in ashes. And speaking of, do you guys know any artist that is adept of sculpture?
Not yet, but I can ask around.
I was thinking of maybe commissioning a statue for our sheriff.
Will it be a headless one?
No. Oh, but the idea appeals to me. He was a headless horseman.
There was.
And without any face, it would be hard to recognize. And we could put it on display at the Met or the MoMA.
This is very true. Very true. I
Mm.
like the headless
There's the
idea.
advantage that it could serve as a reminder that nobody is secure in the city and they need to contribute to the war. Should they at least need to defend themselves? Security goes with the numbers.
Very true. Also, don't stand when somebody's aiming a rifle at your head.
No, usually you have to duck.
Oh, that night, it'll live on in infamy. My first Elysium in this town.
Well, let's hope it's not your last.
It won't be.
How's your clan reacting to the assassination of our sheriff?
We're putting some things together.
Well, should they need any help? I'm in. I met you guys as well at your bowling alley.
Yep. That was my first day here. First day here.
Well, at least it wasn't your last.
Yeah.
As she says that, Sabrina will take a flask out of her purse and take a sip.
So Thaddeus, you said you had, there might be possibly a few silver daggers here in the shop. I'd like to pick up a couple from you if you have them handy.
I know I have some that are silver. I just cannot, as I'm not a metallurgist, I can't verify if they are any sort of pure silver or some sort of alloy plating, what have you.
Fair enough.
So I'll give that disclaimer. I know they have silver content to them, but beyond that, you'd have to consult a specific expert.
Okay.
I can certainly dig those out.
If you wouldn't mind. Also, please let me know if there's any cost to them.
Well, I think I can certainly see putting together a pair of daggers, and well, I love to haggle and such. I think we are also in a position where it is wartime. We are allies, and we have more important matters than pricing out armaments. Doesn't matter what price I charge you if you can't pay it, or you end up dead before you pay it.
Very true.
I'm more concerned with establishing some stability for all of us. We can always work out further business in the future.
Sounds very capitalistic of you.
I'd like to think there's a layer of altruism in there, but that might be me lying to myself as well.
Well, don't shortchange yourself.
In my mind, making a quick sale isn't necessarily beneficial if it loses you a customer in the long term. And haggling over little things isn't always worth the effort either if it costs a potential ally their life because you push too hard for a bottom line.
Well, I didn't realize time is passing that much fast with such good company, but if you excuse me, I have business to attend to.
Certainly, I'll get my staff looking for some of those swords. We'll see what we can procure, and if you want to send someone back for the herbs you were looking for, we can make arrangements
Oh,
from
for
there.
my staff for sure.
Certainly, perhaps do some email or phone correspondence to work out some additional details and discuss some of those projects that you had mentioned earlier.
Well, you know where I live, and I'm quite sure we're gonna cross paths at the headquarters.
True, I just need to pull myself out of the textbooks and away from the desk.
Of course. I am surprised you're allowed to stay outside the headquarters. Usually the ancient ones don't like us to mingle.
Well, some assets are too valuable to let loose, and the shop was mine prior to my embrace, and in addition to the obvious asset of it brings in occult goods, it provides the intangible asset of being a good fielding place for candidates.
Yes, I will believe you on this. Gentlemen, that was a pleasure as usual. And Sabrina will exit and enter her limousine.
And Thaddeus walks her to the door and holds the door for her as well. He nods and he says, "Good evening to you."
Have a pleasant one, Thaddeus of Clan Tremere. So
It,
thank you very much, guys. I gotta go. And it was fun as usual.
Cheers.
then he'll turn back, provide the daggers, and he says, I'm not concerned with the cost on. He said,
Well, thank you. And I'll take them and I'll put them on my backpack.
He says, if you decide you're looking for something with a little more heft, I can certainly procure things. I don't want to keep too many weapons in the shop because it gives the wrong impression. If too many people already who equate the occult just to teenage kids in black with blood sacrifices in the graveyard.
Yeah, that's never a good thing. Try to live a covered life as much as possible.
Well, and there's a couple of downsides. One is it strays dangerously close to information that we don't want to promote. Two, it promotes an inaccurate image, which is bad PR.
Very much so.
So I strive to keep my occult inventory accurate and to also educate those people who come in as well. There's opportunities. Sometimes that kid who comes in when he wants a pentagram and a dagger and a goat skull and a silver bowl or chalice, and it's simply because no one explained to him the fundamentals of those beliefs. Other times it's because he's a punk who's watched too many death metal music videos and doesn't really care about accuracy. He just wants to look hardcore.
Yes. There's lots of them going around right now.
There is. It's somewhat of a shame, but it's the cost of doing business as well.
That it is.
We try to educate and go from there. So if you find yourself though looking for something culturally specific or style specific, I personally prefer a stiletto over a traditional knife, but everyone's got their own method, means, practice, what have you.
That they do.
Got to work for your style, or it doesn't matter.
Correct.
Knew a gentleman once with a pair of brass knuckles. He could disarm someone with a sword because he had the appropriate style.
Yeah, there was a gentleman in the war coterie the other night that used brass knuckles, and he was the epitome of a tree puncher.
Well, as I said, culture matters, method matters, practice matters, style matters.
He was effective. That's, in the end, that's the only thing that matters.
It is, but effectiveness comes from those other components.
That it does. That it does.
I'll get an email off yet tonight about the scepter you're looking for. What is it? A specific type of head? Human, male, female, animal?
It's male. It's male human.
Preserved, shrunken, bare skull.
Eyes closed, mouth open.
Interesting. I'll put words out for that and see what I can come up with.
Sounds doable. Sounds very, very doable. Yeah, email me anytime. I'm normally around, and with that, I'll produce a card with my number and email on there and hand it to Thaddeus. Just email me there, and I'll get back to you rather quick. If I don't get back to you, then I've got at least one or two other folks that'll maybe reach out to you. They don't work directly with me, but we all do business together. So,
well, that's important as well. Having a good network to do business.
Yep. Learned that many years ago. Well, with that, I appreciate the new daggers. I'll get them checked out and let you know if they were legit and full pure silver.
Well, I know many were silver plated for durability. That may or may not work for your needs as well. I'm still learning some of the different cultures and lores. My knowledge of mystic practices tends to lie with mortal practices. Some of the other lores, I'm still picking up bits and pieces. If you know anyone who has information to share regarding the other supernaturals, I'm always interested. But
yeah, I can always find out if anybody's got any books that they don't need anymore.
Books are always fantastic, and I have no problem keeping them secure if that's a concern.
No worries.
The lower level here is it's got additional security beyond the shop. So Anything else I can get you before you head out for the evening?
Nope, I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. I'll definitely stop back by soon to drop off a couple things, most likely, and just look around and see what you have to offer a little bit more. But I think I've taken up enough of your time tonight, and I will definitely reach back out probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week.
That sounds fantastic. That'll give me time to get word out, get word back, and even if we don't have it on hand, I can at least have answers on your scepter.
Okay, I appreciate that.
If it's not on the market, we'll at least know that, and we can reach from there, see how far we want to cast that web.
Sounds good.
Oh, excellent. Have yourself a fantastic evening. If you don't want to leave by Main Street, the back alley does have a manhole hatch. I know you mentioned that might be your preferred highway, and
it is.
Show you out the back if you prefer.
I appreciate that.
Thaddeus will take them through the back room is just like a work room. There's shelves, workbench, computer, and then he takes them out the back door to a relatively narrow alley that does indeed have a manhole hatch.
Okay.
He'll bid you good evening and hope to do further business with you.
Oh,
if
we
you
will.
Want those daggers enchanted, let Sabrina or myself know, and we'll reach out. Make some arrangements.
Most definitely. I will reach out. I appreciate all the help tonight, and you have a good evening, sir. And with that, I will hit the ladder going down into the sewer, and I'll disappear from the scene.
All right. Thaddeus, as his guests have left, is going to lock up shop, send out some emails, ask some questions, and perhaps have some private conversation with Elizabeth, his newly acquired ghoul staff. Get to know her a little better and see what she learned and what she heard. So with that, I will end the scene. Thank you, fellow players, for joining me. Thank you, any watchers, for watching. And this has been a social scene for the Living World of Darkness Vampire Venue.